everyone, and welcome to the Facility Resilience Podcast, where we discuss facility design, operation, and maintenance strategies, in addition to business continuity and resilience. I'm your host, Jennifer Getz, and today I'm joined by Philip Jacklin, Continuing Education Program Manager with Diversified Fall Protection. Phil, thank you so much for joining me on this episode today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So I'm excited to talk to you about this because this is some interesting news we're covering. We're going to discuss OSHA and specifically exploring OSHA's General Duty Clause. So from my understanding, the General Duty Clause of the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970 gives OSHA the ability to address hazards that aren't standardized. So really enforcing employers to create a workplace that is free from recognized hazards. What has been the impact of this clause since it was enacted?
Sure. So it's been a pretty positive thing in advocating for worker safety, because the idea of this is that OSHA has all these standards for how to operate, at what height fall protection is required, all these parameters, but there are gray areas. And the general duty clause would be pulled out and cited against the company when there was a gray area in the regulation, but a worker was injured or killed. And so it's a case-by-case basis, but this was really relevant when there was already industry consensus established. So a really good example in the fall protection world of this was when the Dropped Object ISEA standard got passed in 2018. Essentially, there's official equipment made for your objects while you're at height. So if they drop and to injure somebody, it prevents them from dropping. It's like fall protection for your tools, right? Not required by OSHA. But now that there was a standard in place, if a contractor had a tool that fell and injured a worker below, OSHA could say, hey, we're going to pull the general duty clause because there are industry consensus standards available that other people are using to prevent this from happening. So while we haven't updated OSHA to kind of memorialize this industry consensus standard like ANSI Z359, we're still going to pull the general duty clause because you have a general duty to keep your employees free of injury and fatality while they're at work, and you failed to do that in this case. So that's when it would come by. And so it was, like I said, really good for worker safety when there was a gray area and somebody still got injured. It kind of held the employer accountable when that happened.
Very cool. So it served as a bit of a fail-safe for OSHA if they couldn't quite nail somebody for a specific infraction.
And in that, you can see the tension that can grow between employers and OSHA from that, right? Between, hey, if your specification was more solid, perhaps this wouldn't have happened. That's why something that's a high point of contention.
Well, it's interesting because in July, we spoke about how OSHA proposed to reduce its own power by codifying that the General Duty Clause doesn't authorize the agency to prohibit, restrict, or penalize inherently risky activities that are intrinsic to professional, athletic, or entertainment occupations. So what are your thoughts on this, and how do you think other safety professionals feel about this proposal?
Sure. So there are, I guarantee, a mixture of feelings on how safety professionals feel about this. But, like I said, the general duty clause is something that would almost always get contested. And so what this does, we've seen this administration is very, for lack of a term, pro-business, right? They're for kind of freeing up business from getting bogged down from kind of like over-regulation. So this move is just kind of this administration with this belief saying like, hey, we think that we actually need to deregulate the general duty clause, tone it back, because it's been used in cases where maybe it shouldn't have been. And it does list these specific industries where these are hard ones to protect people, like protecting performers on a stage while they're performing. Like no one's going to have an anchor point and a lanyard in the middle of a play, right? Aladdin's not going to look like that on Broadway. So it's like, how do you protect those people though? And that's kind of where this comes in, like, okay, let's make the general duty clause not as overreaching as it was and maybe reel it back a little bit because we do make it hard to achieve this goal.
You mentioned Aladdin or being on the stage. So it's specifically the proposal was talking about these risky activities, this inherent risk that people take by taking on a certain job.
Right.
I'm curious to know, do you think that this could be a slippery slope that could lead to a further reduction in public protections for workers? Because I know it's seemingly focused on certain industries at this point, but, from your experience, what are your concerns with this?
Sure. I think the spirit of this is really to like these inherently risky activities to make sure that, hey, we just say this is inherently risky, right? But I am afraid that inherent risk is somewhat of a vague term. Working at heights inherently is dangerous if you're not using equipment. So I am afraid that the general duty clause, in my opinion, it just made gray areas more black and white. And this will only make gray areas a little bit more gray, where employees, employers, even like manufacturers can be like, I don't know how to provide because I don't know what's necessarily required in these weird instances. So it's hard to say what fall protection or safety equipment you should have. So I just think the two-sidedness of the general duty clause, with it getting reeled back a little bit, it just makes it a little bit more vague for everybody.
That's interesting. So it's kind of a little more unclear on how they can be compliant with this.
Essentially, like, I'm just afraid that if OSHA becomes less effective for specific industries, it's going to become less effective for all industries. That's all. We want to keep workers safe. That's, at least I want to.
Absolutely. That should always be the goal. And I know it's the goal for our facility managers. That's one of their primary priorities, safety and security. Yeah. So how do you think this could potentially alter how facilities teams will approach workplace safety? I know we said that there might be some vagueness moving forward, but do you think this would really affect how organizations may take a look at workplace safety, or especially industries with more inherently dangerous, more risky situations that could occur for employees?
Right. Well, I think this is actually a really fun litmus test for some companies, because they can tell themselves, hey, if OSHA went away tomorrow, would our safety program change at all? And most people can confidently say, no, not at all. It wouldn't. We want to keep our workers safe. So it's like, okay, then this really doesn't matter to us. So I think in the sense that if the legal mandate to provide fall protection, if that is the tipping point, right, for an employer, I don't think this is going to be like, all right, we're definitely not using it now. I think the employer that wasn't already wasn't. This does embolden some. I think it's a stark minority of employers, but that don't want to pay the money for that. But those employers are just usually on the up and up. They don't last very long as employers. So more or less to say, if you have a good safety program already, and most companies do, then I don't think it's going to have much effect on you, because your goal is to keep the worker safe, not necessarily just to remain compliant with a vague standard.
What do you think, just from your experience talking with different companies, and what is involved in a great safety program?
It doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to start off with a fantastic one. It's really just one that what I've seen companies that they have just a lot of members creating it. They have not just a safety team, but they have employee advocates. They have leadership involvement. It becomes less of like a safety issue and a culture issue if it's not safe. It's just that if you're looking at safety as it's one thing in your company, then you're already kind of looking at it the wrong way, right? This should be something that's just kind of within the company. You just make sure it's safe for everybody, no matter what.
Just ingrained in the culture of the organization.
Yeah, I would say that anything that's a preventative program, it tries to prevent things that are happening. Every company is going to pay for reactive safety gear. I mean, like, there's no company here that will not buy fall protection equipment after a fall occurs. Like, that company doesn't exist. Nobody makes that decision. But really good employers are the ones that have huge fall protection programs, and they're like, no, we haven't had a single fall in 5 years, but we're still investing in this, right?
Yeah. Now back to the general duty clause. I wanted to ask, have you heard any updates on it since it was proposed in July? And where do you think this is going to go? Do you think this is going to move forward, or do you have any thoughts on next steps from here?
Sure. Well, I did hear recently some good news. National Safety Council reported that the Senate approved, it's a Senate committee, forgive my political jargon, but this is a congressional committee that approved to maintain funding for OSHA, the same level for 2026, and increase funding for NIOSH, which does all of the research that feeds kind of OSHA. So while there were many people in the industry concerned about this, even if the general duty clause does get rolled back a little bit, I think with maintaining funding, I think any kind of alarm bells can be kind of quieted and say, like, hey, it looks like OSHA is going to kind of operations as normal. They might just appear a little differently on some of these nuanced things like general duty here and there.
Very cool. Well, I'm glad to hear good news. That's always great these days.
Yes.
So one thing I wanted to ask was, do you think there's any major takeaways that facility managers should kind of keep in the back of their minds as they pay attention to this news as it changes? Or do you think things are going to be the same, so we might not have too much change coming?
Yeah, I think sometimes things like this, all this excitement for no change, it's a good experience to go through, though. Like I said earlier, if OSHA going away tomorrow is going to affect your safety program, then that would be like, hey, what is the goal of our safety program, right? But I just think that any facility executive that their company say, hey, if OSHA went away, we would still protect our workers at the same level, if not more, right? That's not why we do it. We do it because we want our workers to come back tomorrow. So I just think it's a good moment of reflection that may have been forced on a lot of this, but we should have it more often to see how we're doing and see, any ways we can improve, because you never want to have the program that is, just barely. You want to have the program that people are striving to imitate, right?
Because I know it really feeds into, like you said, whether employees will come back tomorrow, whether your organization's reputation in general, it all ties back to how well you can make sure people are safe and secure. I speak to a lot of business continuity professionals about safety. If there's an active shooter incident, a lot of people don't want to go back to the buildings after. Either buildings are torn down or entire rooms and sections of buildings have to be completely redone because of security, safety incidents. So it's so critical to have this thought out.
I was going to say, you try getting a crew of roofers that's getting paid peanuts to get back up on a roof after they just saw their buddy fall. An investment in fall protection, this is a conversation for a whole different episode, but it solves retention problems, labor shortage, training, onboarding, morale, productivity. Investing in safety is just investing in your business, essentially. So that's really the takeaway from this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Philip, again, for joining me. Is there anything you think we haven't covered that you think would be good to mention on this episode? I loved what you said at the end there, that really investing in safety is investing in your business. I think that sums up a lot.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think a really good safety program is run by one question. You imagine you're the worker about to do the task you're looking at. Say, would I want to do this work and still like working for my employer the way I'm asking my employee to do it? And if the answer is yes, and it's an honest yes, then you have a great program. And if it's no, then there's room for improvement, and we'll go from there.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Philip. It's been great talking to you, and I look forward to catching up with you on how this goes a little later down the line.
Definitely. I look forward to it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's a lovely conversation.
Special thank you to Diversified Fall Protection for sponsoring this episode. Diversified Fall Protection is the nation's largest turnkey fall protection systems provider. For over 30 years, they have been committed to ensuring workers return safely home at the end of each day. As a true turnkey fall protection system and equipment provider, their approach to workplace safety covers everything from building risk management awareness to ongoing users training and support. When you partner with DFP, you can rely on fall protection equipment that meets and exceeds OSHA regulations and ANSI standards while receiving thorough maintenance and technical support to keep your employees safe. To learn more, head to their website at www.fallprotect.com. I want to thank our audience so much for listening and to stay tuned for the next episode of the Facility Resilience Podcast.